The surgical scar that stretches across my abdomen pulses with a dull ache as I stand in the doorway of what was once my sanctuary. Blood trickles from my knuckles, a result of my tight grip on the brass key, its edge biting into my palm. Yet the pain is a distant sensation. I hardly register it anymore. Behind me, the wailing of sirens pierces the stillness of the night. The red and blue lights cast an eerie glow over the suburban street, hues that evoke memories of the sterile surgery room, where, 3 months ago, I relinquished a part of myself, an organ, to save the woman who would later mock me. Mom. My 15-year-old son's voice cuts through the darkness, startling me. He stands beside me, taller than I recall, his maturity far beyond his years. In his hand, he clutches the proof that could dismantle them all. Are you ready? I reach for the scar again. It remains tender, still in the process of healing, much like the wound they inflicted on my spirit when they handed me those papers, when they declared I was nothing. Just as they believed they had won, the front door swings open, halting my thoughts. My husband, soon to be my ex, stands there, his complexion ashen. Behind him, his mother cowers, a hand pressed to her side, where my kidney now resides, keeping her alive. The kidney I donated, the very organ that was meant to save our family. You, he breathes, his voice a mere whisper. What have you done? I smile, not a kind smile, but rather one that reflects a person who has been shattered and in the process forged into something formidable, something they should have feared from the very start. What I was planning all along, I reply, stepping forward as the police cars screech to a halt behind us. You never truly took the time to understand me. My son lifts his phone, ready to play the video, the one that alters everything. His grandmother gasps, her eyes widening as she recognizes the content on the screen, the revelations we've uncovered, the truths we hold. You want to know the ironic thing about betrayal? I ask, stepping past them into the house that bears my name on the deed, only my name, a fact they were oblivious to. It reveals precisely who people are beneath the surface, and you taught me that lesson well. The first officer arrives at the door, and I present the folder I've been carrying, a collection of 20 pages of evidence, 3 months of meticulous planning, a lifetime of vengeance distilled into this singular moment. Officers, I say with an even tone, I believe you're looking for these two. Before we proceed, let me take a moment to ask you to comment on which country you're watching this video from. We genuinely love knowing where our global family is tuning in from. And if this is your first visit to our channel, please subscribe. Your support enables us to share even more extraordinary tales of revenge. Enjoy! The roast was exquisite. I had dedicated 6 hours to its preparation, basting it every 30 minutes with a blend of wine and herbs from the garden I nurtured with my own hands. The same hands that had comforted my mother-in-law during her dialysis sessions 3 times a week for the past 2 years. The same hands that signed consent forms to be tested as a kidney donor when no one else in the family matched. Steam wafted from the plate as I set it before my husband, Richard. 15 years of marriage, and I still made an effort to prepare his favorite meal at least once a week. Even though he had been arriving home later and later, and despite his kisses dwindling to mere pecks, his embraces reduced to fleeting pats on the shoulder, I still tried to hold on to hope. "Smells wonderful, dear," his mother, Eleanor, remarked from across the table. She had moved in with us when her health began to decline. I had transformed the guest room into a cozy suite for her, complete with a private bathroom and a small sitting area where she could enjoy her favorite programs. My son Jeremy was the only one who genuinely smiled at me. Really smiled, not the rehearsed, hollow expressions that the other two wore. He had grown so much this year, shooting up 5 inches, his shoulders broadening in a way that reminded me of my father. But his eyes, those were unmistakably mine, dark and observant, always perceiving more than others realized. "Thanks, Mom," he said, already reaching for the potatoes. "You outdid yourself." Richard cleared his throat. a sound I had come to recognize all too well, usually heralding some critique about the house, my appearance, or my work as a freelance graphic designer. But tonight, there was something unsettlingly different about it. His hands trembled slightly as he reached into his jacket pocket. "Before we eat," he said, his tone unnaturally formal, "there's something we need to discuss." The envelope he retrieved was thick, legal-sized. My stomach, already knotted from the recovery of the surgery I had undergone just 6 weeks prior, tightened further. I knew what it contained before he even slid it across the table. You don't live with someone for 15 years without learning to read the signs. "Divorce papers," he stated flatly, as if he were merely commenting on a shift in the weather. "I've already had my lawyer prepare them. It's all very straightforward." The room seemed to tilt around me. I gripped the edge of the table, feeling the texture of the wood beneath my fingertips. 6 weeks. It had been 6 weeks since I had gone under anesthesia and awakened with one less kidney. 6 weeks since I had saved his mother's life. "You're joking?" I heard myself say. Yet even as the words escaped my lips, I realized he wasn't joking. Richard never joked about anything. Eleanor dabbed at her mouth with her napkin, and that's when I noticed it. The smirk, the subtle upturn of her lips that she made no effort to conceal. "We never liked you anyway," she declared, her voice oozing with a satisfaction that sent a chill through my veins. "Richard only married you because you got pregnant, but Jeremy's old enough now. He doesn't need you anymore." I turned to my son. His fork had frozen midair, a piece of potato tumbling back onto his plate. His face shifted from white to red, then to a dangerous shade of purple I had never seen before. "What the hell?" he erupted, standing so abruptly that his chair crashed to the floor. "What the actual hell is wrong with you people?" "Jeremy, watch your language," Richard interjected automatically. But our son wasn't listening. "She saved your life," he shouted, pointing an accusatory finger at Eleanor, his hand trembling with fury. "She gave you her kidney. She underwent surgery, missed work, endured weeks of pain. And this is how you repay her?" "Sit down," Richard commanded, using his lawyer voice, the one that had secured him partnership at his firm, the one that usually silenced everyone in the room. But Jeremy was not everyone. "No," my son replied defiantly, and in that moment, I saw myself reflected in him, the same steel spine I had hidden for so many years. "I won't sit down and I won't stay quiet while you do this to my mother," Jeremy declared, his voice rising in defiance. Eleanor laughed, actually laughed. "Oh, please, he should be grateful. Richard is already being more than generous with the settlement. She gets to keep the car and will have 6 months to find somewhere else to live." Keep the car? Find somewhere else to live? The words echoed in my mind as I surveyed the dining room. I took in the walls I had painted myself, the curtains I had sewn, the pictures I had hung with care. This was my home. I had poured my heart into every corner, infusing it with my touch, my love. "Mom," Jeremy was beside me now, his hand resting on my shoulder. "Mom, say something." But I was rendered speechless. My throat felt constricted, and all I could do was stare at the man I had loved, the man with whom I had built a life, the man whose mother I had saved. He couldn't even meet my gaze, carving into his roast as if this were just another dinner, as if he hadn't just shattered everything. "There's someone else, isn't there?" The words slipped out before I could rein them in. Richard's knife paused, just for a heartbeat, but it was enough. "Her name is Veronica," he said quietly. "She's a paralegal at the firm. We've been seeing each other for about a year. A year? While I was taking his mother to dialysis, while I was being tested to see if I could donate, while I was recovering from major surgery, he had been with someone else." "You waited," I said slowly, the realization dawning on me like a cold sunrise. Neither of them denied it. Jeremy made a sound like a wounded animal. "You used her! You both used her!" I exclaimed, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and disbelief. "We did what we had to do," Eleanor replied primly. "I needed a kidney, and she was a match. It would have been foolish to divorce before the transplant. What if she had refused to donate out of spite?" The room fell into an eerie silence. Even the clock on the wall seemed to halt its ticking. I stood slowly, my hand pressing against the scar that still ached whenever I moved too quickly. 6 weeks post-surgery, and I was still healing, still feeling weak. They had counted on that. "I need some air," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. "Don't be dramatic," Richard sighed dismissively. "Just sign the papers, and we can all move on with our lives." Without signing anything, I walked out of the dining room. Behind me, I heard Jeremy's voice, low and menacing. "You're going to regret this," he warned them. "Both of you. You have no idea who my mother really is, what she's capable of." Eleanor laughed again, a sound dripping with condescension. "Oh, please, what's she going to do? She's a nobody, a glorified housewife who makes logos for small businesses. She has no money, no connections, no power. We hold all the cards." I stood in the hallway, listening. Let them think that. Let them believe I was weak, beaten, broken. They had no clue about the accounts Richard didn't know existed, the properties in my maiden name, the connections I had maintained long before I had buried myself in the role of devoted wife and mother. But most importantly, they had no idea about what Jeremy and I had discovered 3 weeks ago, what we had found in Eleanor's room while she was at a doctor's appointment, what we had documented, recorded, and safely stored away. I touched my scar again. It hurt, but pain was merely another teacher. And I had learned so much from pain lately. "Jeremy," I called softly, "come help me with something in the garage." My son appeared immediately, his face still flushed with anger. "Mom, we can't let them." "Shh," I said, pulling him close. "Remember what we talked about being patient?" His eyes widened with understanding. "You mean tomorrow?" I whispered. "We start tomorrow, but tonight we let them think they've won." He nodded slowly, and I caught that flash of something dangerous in his eyes. My boy, my protector. They had made a grave mistake thinking he would choose them over me. "What do you need me to do?" he asked. "Go back in there. Pretend to be upset, but accepting. Let them believe you're on their side, or at least neutral. Can you do that?" "I'm your son," he replied simply. "I can do anything for you." I kissed his forehead, inhaling the familiar scent of his shampoo. He was still my baby, even at 15. Then let's give them the performance of a lifetime. 3 weeks before that dinner, I hadn't meant to find it. I was simply looking for Eleanor's insurance card to take to her appointment. She had asked me to grab it from her jewelry box while she finished getting ready. Such a simple request, such a trusted daughter-in-law. The jewelry box was antique, passed down through Richard's family for generations. I had always admired it, the way the wood gleamed, the tiny brass lock that was more decorative than functional. Eleanor usually kept it locked on her dresser, but today it was open. I lifted the top tray, searching for the card among the tangled necklaces and rings. That's when I noticed the edge of a photograph hidden beneath the velvet lining. Curious, I pulled it out. It was Richard, but not the recent version of him. This photograph was taken about 5 years ago. He stood next to a woman I didn't recognize, his arm wrapped around her waist in a manner that was decidedly unprofessional. But what truly made my blood run cold was the child between them, a little girl, perhaps 3 years old, with Richard's distinctive green eyes. Mom, I spun around to find Jeremy in the doorway, looking homesick from school with a fever that I now suspected he had faked. "What's that?" he asked, stepping closer. I should have hidden it, should have put it back and pretended I had never seen it, but my hands trembled too violently. Jeremy took the photo from me, his eyes widening. "Is that Dad? Who's the kid?" Before I could respond, we heard Eleanor's voice echoing from down the hall. "Did you find it, dear?" "Just a minute," I called back, my voice surprisingly steady. I grabbed Eleanor's insurance card from the tray and started to put the photo back, but Jeremy halted me. "Wait," he whispered. He pulled out his phone and snapped a picture of the photograph. "We need to know more." He was right. We did need to know more. And over the next 3 weeks, we uncovered everything. The woman's name was Veronica Summers, and the child was named Ella. Richard had been paying child support through a shell company, money siphoned from accounts he thought I didn't know about. But I did know. I had always known. I just hadn't understood what the money was for. Surprisingly, Jeremy turned out to be quite adept at investigation. Perhaps it was all those mystery novels he read. Or perhaps it was the computer skills he had inherited from my brother, the one who worked in cybersecurity. Within days, Jeremy had uncovered Veronica's social media accounts, Ella's preschool records, and even the apartment Richard had been renting for them. "Why didn't he just divorce you years ago?" Jeremy asked one night as we sat in my car outside Veronica's building, watching Richard's BMW pull into the garage. "Your grandmother," I replied simply. "She controls the trust fund. Richard only gets full access when she dies, or if she approves. And Eleanor would never approve of him leaving me for his paralegal. It would be too scandalous for her society friends. So he was waiting for her to die." I laughed bitterly. Kidney disease is usually fatal without treatment. He probably figured he had a year or 2 at most. But then you offered to get tested, and I was a match. I touched my side, where the incision was still healing. They couldn't refuse without raising suspicions, but they also couldn't let me stay afterward, not when Veronica was growing impatient. Jeremy was quiet for a long moment. "We're going to destroy them, aren't we?" I looked at my son, my beautiful, brilliant boy who had stood by me through all of this. "Do you think that makes me a bad person?" "I think it makes you human, and I think they deserve whatever's coming to them." But even then, even with all that evidence, I might have simply accepted the divorce, might have taken my settlement and walked away. If they hadn't been so cruel about it, if they hadn't thrown it in my face at dinner over the roast I had lovingly prepared 6 weeks after I had given Eleanor my kidney. That was the moment I realized they needed to pay, not just financially, but completely, utterly. I wanted them to lose everything the way they had tried to make me lose everything. And Jeremy, my unexpected ally, was ready to help me achieve that. The morning after the dinner, I woke up with perfect clarity. Pain had crystallized into purpose, and purpose had transformed into a plan. Richard had already left for work, taking his mother to a follow-up appointment on the way. The house was silent, save for the sound of Jeremy's footsteps in his room above. I brewed a cup of coffee and opened my laptop. First things first, the lawyer. Not just any lawyer, but Susan Sebastian. We had gone to college together before she became one of the city's most ruthless divorce attorneys. Despite my retreat into suburban motherhood, she still remembered me. The girl who had helped her pass organic chemistry, who had held her hair back at parties, who had kept her secrets. "Julia," her voice was sharp with surprise when she answered my call. "Is that really you?" "I need your help, Susan." "I'll clear my morning," she replied. By the time I reached her office, she had already pulled property records, financial statements, and a preliminary assessment of my situation. Susan doesn't just practice law, she waged war with it, I thought. "The house is in your name only," she stated. "Inherited from your aunt, correct? Never refinanced after marriage?" Richard had wanted to, but I always found excuses to delay. She smiled like a shark sensing blood. Smart girl. What else does he not know about? I shared the details of the investment accounts my grandmother had left me, hidden under my maiden name. The freelance work I'd been doing for major corporations was all under an LLC that Richard knew nothing about. The storage unit full of evidence I had been meticulously collecting for years, just in case. "You've been preparing for this," Susan observed. "I'd been hoping I'd never need to," I corrected her. But my mother always said to have an exit strategy, and the kidney donation. I showed her the medical records, the consent forms, and the text from Eleanor begging me to get tested. Susan's expression darkened. "They waited until after you donated to serve papers. 6 weeks after?" she said, leaning back in her chair, fingers steepled. "That's calculatedly cruel. A judge won't like that, especially Judge Martinez. She's big on family values and medical ethics. I'll make sure this lands on her docket." "There's more," I said, revealing the photo Jeremy had found. I told her about Veronica, about Ella, and about the secret apartment in the shell company. Susan actually laughed. "Oh, this is beautiful. Hidden assets, adultery, fraud, and the mother knew. She knew everything. I have recordings." Her eyebrows shot up. I pulled out my phone and played one of the videos Jeremy had secretly captured. Eleanor and Richard discussing the divorce timeline, ensuring it was long enough after the surgery so that I couldn't claim coercion, but soon enough that I wouldn't have time to recover fully and fight back. "Your son recorded this? He's been recording everything for 3 weeks, ever since we found out about Veronica." Susan stood and walked to her window, gazing out at the city below. "Julia, with this evidence, I can destroy them. But are you prepared for that? Once we start this, there's no going back." "They took my kidney and tried to throw me away like trash," I said quietly. "They used my love for my family against me, made my son witness his father betray his mother over dinner." "Yes, I'm prepared," I declared. She turned back to me, and for a moment I glimpsed the girl I had known in college, the one who had been betrayed by her first husband and had channeled that pain into a career dedicated to protecting others. "Then let's begin," she said. "But first, we need to secure assets. Richard's probably already moving money." She was right, but Richard had made one critical mistake. He had taught me all his passwords over the years for emergencies, and he was terrible about changing them. That afternoon, while Richard was at work, I systematically documented every account, every asset, every penny. I uncovered more than I had anticipated: offshore accounts, hidden investment properties, and most damning of all, emails exchanged between him and Veronica dating back 3 years. Not just one, I thought. Jeremy helped, his fingers flying over his laptop keyboard. "Mom, look at this," he said, turning his screen toward me. It was Eleanor's email account. My brilliant son had somehow gained access. "How did you?" "She saved her password on her tablet, the one I set up for her last month," he grinned. "She's been emailing someone named Margaret about the divorce. Look what she wrote." I read the email, my stomach churning. Finally getting rid of that pathetic woman. Can you believe she actually fell for the whole Family Emergency Act? As if I would ever consider her real family. The kidney was just a bonus. Now I'll live long enough to see Richard with someone worthy of our name. "Download everything," I instructed him. "Every email, every message, every photo." As the files transferred, I called Susan. "How do you feel about fraud charges on top of the divorce?" "I'm listening," Susan replied. I explained the emails, detailing the conspiracy between Richard and Eleanor to deceive me into donating my kidney. "That's medical fraud," Susan said slowly. "Obtaining an organ donation under false pretenses, that's actually criminal, not just civil." "Can we prove it with those emails and recordings?" "Absolutely, Julia. This isn't just about divorce anymore. This could mean jail time for both of them." I glanced at Jeremy, who was watching me intently. "Do it. I instructed. File everything. Richard didn't realize anything was amiss for 3 days. He went to work, came home late, and avoided me as usual. Eleanor continued living in my house, eating my food, using my kidney to filter her blood, all while smirking whenever our paths crossed. On the 4th day, Richard's world began to crumble. It started with his credit cards being declined at lunch with clients. Then his key card stopped working at the office. By the time he reached the bank to demand answers, Susan had already frozen all our joint assets, pending the divorce investigation. He came home in a rage, slamming the door so hard that the pictures rattled on the walls. "What did you do?" he screamed, finding me calmly working on my laptop in the kitchen. "I protected my assets," I replied without looking up. "My lawyer advised me to freeze joint accounts until we can properly divide them." "Your lawyer?" His face turned purple. "You weren't supposed to get a lawyer. The papers were standard. All you had to do was sign." "Why would I sign anything without legal representation?" I shot back. He had taught me that. Never sign anything without reading it first. Never proceed without counsel. He grabbed the laptop and I let him. There was nothing on it he could use. Everything crucial was encrypted and backed up in 3 different locations. "This is Susan Sebastian's doing," he spat, recognizing the legal letterhead on the screen. "How can you afford her?" "Turns out I have more resources than you knew about. Funny how 15 years of marriage and you never really knew me at all." Eleanor appeared in the doorway, her face pale. "Richard, what's happening? My credit card was declined at the pharmacy." "Mom's being vindictive," he told her, "but it won't last. I'll call Judge Harrison. He owes me a favor." "Judge Harrison retired last month," I informed him. "Our case has been assigned to Judge Martinez. Susan says she's very interested in the circumstances of our separation." The color drained from Richard's face. Everyone knew Judge Martinez. She was infamous for 3 things: protecting women in divorce proceedings, imposing harsh sentences for fraud, and absolutely destroying men who abandon their families. "You can't prove anything," though her voice trembled. Jeremy walked in, earbuds in, pretending not to notice the tension. He grabbed an apple from the counter and took a bite. "Oh, Dad, someone from your office called, said something about an emergency audit, and someone named Veronica is looking for you. She sounded upset." Richard's phone started ringing, then Eleanor's, and finally the landline. They didn't answer any of them. "You should probably take those," I suggested. "Sounds important." Richard grabbed his phone and walked out, and we could hear his voice rising in panic from the garage. Eleanor stared at me, and for the first time since I'd known her, she looked afraid. "What have you done?" "Nothing compares to what you did to me," I replied, "but the night's still young." With that, she fled to her room. Jeremy and I sat at the kitchen counter, sharing his apple in a comfortable silence. "The forensic accountant found the shell company," he said quietly. "Susan just texted, $300,000 hidden from marital assets while he's been paying for his mistress and secret child." I did some quick math in my head. In our state, hiding assets meant he would forfeit them entirely to the injured party, me, plus face penalties. The house is already mine. His 401k will be split, but with these hidden assets? "You'll be fine, Mom. More than fine." Just then, Richard stormed back in, his phone clutched tightly in his hand. "Veronica is being evicted!" he shouted. "You had her evicted," I replied truthfully. But when the forensic accountant alerted the fraud, they froze all assets connected to the case, including the apartment you rented under the shell company, the one you've been paying for with marital funds. "That's my daughter's home," Jeremy said, standing up slowly. "You have a daughter?" The silence that followed was deafening. Richard realized what he had just admitted in front of his son, his legitimate son, who hadn't known about his half-sister. My boy was a better actor than I had given him credit for. The hurt on his face looked so real that even I almost believed it. "How could you?" Jeremy whispered. "How could you do this to us?" "Jeremy, it's complicated." "No." He backed away. You made me lie to Mom for years. Every time you said you were working late, I believed you. Every time you missed my games for client dinners, I defended you, while you had another family. It's not like that. What is it like then? Jeremy's voice cracked perfectly. Tell me how it's okay that you cheated on Mom, had a secret kid, and then divorced her after she saved Grandma's life? Eleanor tried to intervene. Jeremy, sweetheart, your father... Don't! He turned on her, and the venom in his voice was palpable. You knew everything, and you let Mom donate her kidney anyway. You used her. She was a match. You needed someone you could throw away after, Jeremy finished, his anger boiling over. God, you're both monsters. He stormed out, slamming his door hard enough to rattle the house. Richard started after him, but I stood in his way. Don't you dare, I said quietly. You've hurt him enough. He's my son. Yes, Richard replied, frustration evident. And he just learned his father is a liar, a cheater, and a fraud. Give him space. Richard's phone rang again. This time he answered. What do you mean, suspended pending investigation? His voice rose an octave. The partners can't do this. I'm a partner. But apparently they could, and they had. The managing partner had received copies of some interesting documents that morning. Emails showing Richard had been using company resources for his affair, billing hours to clients while meeting Veronica, and using the company card for their dinners and hotels. Susan had been thorough. Richard sank into a chair, his face ashen. This is destruction of property, defamation. I'll sue. With what money? I challenged. And which lawyer? Every decent attorney in the city knows Susan. They won't take a case against her, not one this obviously lost. Eleanor appeared in the doorway, clutching her phone. The country club called. They're reviewing our membership. Something about moral clauses and criminal investigations. Criminal? Richard's head snapped up. I smiled sweetly. Oh, didn't I mention? The DA's office is very interested in the fraud aspect, specifically obtaining an organ donation through false pretenses and conspiracy. Turns out that's a felony. The following week unfolded like a symphony of destruction, each day bringing a new movement in Richard and Eleanor's downfall. On Monday, the country club officially revoked their membership. Eleanor's entire social circle turned their backs on her overnight. The same women who had lunched with her for decades suddenly stopped returning her calls. By Tuesday, Richard's partners voted him out of the firm. 15 years of building his practice gone in an instant. They offered him a choice: leave quietly with a minimal severance, or fight it and have everything made public. Wednesday brought more chaos as Veronica was arrested for fraud. It turned out she had been embezzling from the firm as well, with Richard's unwitting assistance. She sang like a canary to the police, throwing Richard under every bus she could find. On Thursday, the medical board opened an investigation into the kidney donation after receiving an anonymous tip about coercion and fraud. Eleanor's doctor was horrified to learn the truth. Then, on Friday, the news broke. Somehow, and I honestly had nothing to do with this part, a reporter caught wind of the story. Local attorney divorces wife after secret kidney donation to mother made the evening news. By Saturday, Richard was begging. He showed up at my bedroom door at 3 a.m, disheveled and reeking of whiskey. Julia, please, we can work this out, he pleaded. I sat up in bed, pulling my robe around me. There's nothing to work out. You served me divorce papers, remember? Over pot roast. That was a mistake. Mother pushed me into it. Veronica was threatening to tell the truth. He flinched, as if expecting me to take Ella and disappear. She said if I didn't leave you, she'd make sure I never saw my daughter again. So, you chose them? I chose my child. What about our child? I asked quietly. What about Jeremy? Did you think about him at all? Richard's shoulders slumped. I thought he'd understand. Eventually, I thought I could make him understand. Understand what? That you're a liar, that you betrayed his mother, that you valued your secret family more than your real one. You were never supposed to find out about them. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. That's your defense? That you're bad at deception? I loved you once, he said desperately. When we first married, I loved you, but not enough. Never. He moved closer, and I could see the desperation in his eyes. Call off the lawyers, please. I'll give you whatever you want in the divorce. Just stop the criminal investigation. They're talking about charging me with conspiracy to commit medical fraud. I could go to prison. You should have thought of that before. My mother could lose the kidney. They said if it's proven she obtained it fraudulently, she could be removed from all transplant lists forever. It would be a death sentence. I touched my scar, the one that still ached. She should have thought of that before. She never liked me anyway. Julia, please, get out. But he didn't move. Instead, he grabbed my hands, falling to his knees beside the bed. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I was weak and stupid and cruel, but please don't do this. Think of Jeremy. Think of what it would do to him if his father went to prison. Jeremy knows exactly what's happening, I said, pulling my hands away, and he supports me completely. As if on cue, Jeremy appeared in the doorway, his phone in hand, recording everything. Dad, you need to leave, he said calmly. Yeah? Richard stared at his son, then at the phone. You're recording this? I record everything now, Jeremy replied. Mom's lawyer suggested it for our protection. It's our mom and me against the world, the only real family I have left. The words hit Richard like physical blows. He stumbled to his feet, glancing between us. This isn't over, he said, but his voice was hollow. Yes, it is, I countered. Your lawyer will receive the settlement terms on Monday. I suggest you accept them. After he left, Jeremy sat on the edge of my bed. You okay, Mom? Are you? I countered. That couldn't have been easy to hear. He was quiet for a moment. You know what the worst part is? I keep thinking about all the times he made you feel bad for not contributing enough financially. Remember when he said your freelance work was just a hobby? All the while, he was stealing from marital assets to support his mistress? People show you who they are, I said, pulling him into a hug. I see you, Mom, and you're the strongest person I know. The criminal trial began 2 months later. Richard and Eleanor sat at the defendant's table, their expensive lawyers unable to hide how damning the evidence was. I testified for 3 hours, walking the jury through the timeline, the diagnosis, the search for a donor, Eleanor's tearful pleas for me to get tested, the surgery, the recovery, and then the divorce papers served over dinner. Susan had coached me well. Stay calm, stick to the facts. Let the evidence speak, and the evidence screamed. The emails exchanged between Richard and Eleanor, meticulously planning the timeline. The recordings Jeremy had made, alongside the financial records, revealing that the conspiracy stretched back years. The medical forms I had signed, believing I was saving my family, not enabling my own betrayal. Mrs. Winters, the prosecutor asked, why did you agree to donate your kidney? Because I loved them, I replied simply. Eleanor was my family. I couldn't stand by and watch her die when I had the power to save her. And how do you feel now, knowing it was all a manipulation? I looked directly at Eleanor, feeling as if I had been harvested, like livestock kept around just long enough to get what they needed. Eleanor couldn't meet my gaze. The jury deliberated for only 2 hours, guilty on all counts. Richard received 3 years for fraud and conspiracy. With good behavior, he'd be out in 18 months. His law license was permanently revoked. Eleanor's sentence was lighter, 2 years of probation and community service. But the medical board's decision was what truly devastated her. She was permanently banned from all transplant lists. The kidney I had given her would be the last one she would ever receive. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed us. Jeremy stayed close, protective, and solid beside me. "Mrs. Winters, how does it feel to see justice served?" "It doesn't give me my kidney back," I said, "but it does give me closure. What's next for you?" I thought about the settlement I had received, the house that was now fully mine, the fresh start waiting for us. "Healing," I said, "just healing." 6 months after the trial, I stood in the doorway of what used to be Eleanor's room. The room was empty now, patiently awaiting its transformation into my new home office. Eleanor, on the other hand, was living in a small apartment across town, completely abandoned by her society friends. The last I heard, she was working part-time as a receptionist just to make ends meet. The trust fund Richard had been counting on was frozen by the courts, pending civil lawsuits from the law firm he had defrauded. Meanwhile, Jeremy was thriving at school in ways he never had before. Without the toxic presence of his father and grandmother, he had truly blossomed. Straight A's, captain of the debate team, and surprisingly, a girlfriend who adores him, I thought with pride. "You sure you want to paint it yellow?" he asked, eyeing the color swatches I had chosen. "It's the color of new beginnings," I told him, "like sunshine after storms." He hugged me then, taller than me now, but still my baby. "We made it, didn't we, Mom?" "We did." Just then, the doorbell rang, interrupting my contemplation. I wasn't expecting anyone, but when I opened the door, I found a young girl with familiar green eyes and a pointed chin standing there. "Oh, Richard's other daughter," I said softly. "Mrs. Winters," she said nervously. "I know who you are," I replied gently. "Come in." She was 5, clutching a teddy bear, looking utterly lost. Behind her stood a social worker. "I'm sorry to bother you," the social worker said, "but you're listed as next of kin." I blanked, confused. "I'm what?" "Mr. Winters listed you as the emergency contact for Ella. With him incarcerated and Miss Summers also serving time, we need to place Ella temporarily." He listed me. I couldn't hide my shock. After everything? The social worker handed me a letter. Richard's handwriting, shaky but recognizable. "Julia, I know I have no right to ask you for anything. I destroyed our family, betrayed your trust, and caused you immeasurable pain. But Ella is innocent in all this. She's just a little girl who's lost everything. You were the best mother Jeremy could have asked for. You're the only person I trust to show Ella that kind of love. Even if it's just until I get out, please. She needs someone good in her life. I'm sorry for everything." Richard's words echoed in my mind. I looked at the little girl, seeing Jeremy in her eyes, innocence caught in the crossfire of adult cruelty. "What happens if I say no?" I asked the social worker. "Foster care," she replied softly. Ella's grip on her teddy bear tightened. She was trying so hard to be brave, this little girl who had done nothing wrong except be born to the wrong parents. "Mom?" Jeremy had come home early, standing behind me in the doorway. He looked at Ella, understanding immediately who she was. "She's my sister," he stated, his voice firm. "Half-sister," I corrected automatically. He knelt down to Ella's level. "Hi, I'm Jeremy. That's a cool bear. What's its name?" "Mr. Buttons," she whispered shyly. "Mr. Buttons looks like he could use some cookies. Mom makes the best cookies. Want to help us make some?" Ella looked up at me uncertainly. "Are you my mommy now?" My heart cracked. This little girl had lost everything. Her mother in prison, her father too, her home. She was collateral damage in a war she'd never asked for. "I'm Jeremy's mommy," I said carefully, "but you can stay with us for a while if you'd like." The social worker handed me paperwork. It's temporary guardianship, just until other arrangements can be made. But as I watched Jeremy take Ella's hand, leading her to the kitchen while chattering about chocolate chips versus sugar cookies, I realized that nothing about this would be temporary. Richard had taken my kidney, but inadvertently, he had given me another child to love. The irony was not lost on me. 3 years passed. Ella now called me Mama Julia, had her own room painted a vibrant purple, her choice, and followed Jeremy around like a devoted shadow. He had just started college locally, refusing to go further away. "Someone needs to help with the munchkin," he had said, ruffling Ella's hair affectionately. Richard was released after 18 months, but had never petitioned for custody. He saw Ella for supervised visits once a month, looking grayer and older each time. He had found work as a paralegal, ironic considering his past, and lived in a small studio apartment downtown. Eleanor we encountered occasionally at the grocery store or the bank. The kidney was failing again, rejection setting in, despite the anti-rejection drugs. Without the possibility of another transplant, her time was limited. She had tried reaching out once, sending a letter full of apologies and regrets, but I returned it unopened. Some bridges, once burned, couldn't be rebuilt. "Mama Julia, can you help with my family tree project?" Ella asked one evening, spreading construction paper across the kitchen table. "Of course, sweetheart." She drew carefully, her tongue poking out in concentration. At the top, she placed Jeremy and me, then herself. After a moment of hesitation, she added Richard to the side, connected by a dotted line. "Is this okay?" she asked anxiously. "Mrs. Peterson says family trees are about showing who loves us." "It's perfect," I assured her. Just then, Jeremy came in from basketball practice, sweaty and grinning. "What's perfect?" "My family tree," Ella showed him proudly. "Look, you're at the top with Mama Julia," Ella said proudly. "As it should be," Jeremy replied, dropping a gentle kiss on her head. Later that evening, after Ella was asleep, Jeremy found me on the porch watching the sunset. "You know what I realized today?" he said. "What's that?" "We won. Not just the court case. I mean, yeah, that too. But we really won. We're happy, we have Ella, the house is ours, you're doing amazing with your design business. And Dad and Grandma, they're just existing." "Revenge isn't supposed to taste sweet," I said, though I understood what he meant. "It's not revenge anymore, though, is it? It's just life. We built something better from the ashes." He was right. My freelance business had exploded after the trial. Apparently, surviving a public betrayal and coming out on top made me someone people wanted to hire. "She's a fighter," they'd say. "I want that kind of strength on my team." "Do you ever regret it?" Jeremy asked, his brow furrowing. "Everything we did? Do you?" He thought for a moment. "I regret that it was necessary. I regret that Dad turned out to be who he was. But the actions we took, we protected ourselves. We got justice, and we got Ella out of it. She's the unexpected gift." I nodded in agreement, feeling the weight of his words. Just then, my phone buzzed, Eleanor's number flashing on the screen. I almost didn't answer, but something compelled me to pick up. "Julia?" Her voice was weak, raspy. "I'm in the hospital." "Okay, I'm dying." I said nothing. "The kidney's failing, complete rejection. They're saying days, maybe a week." "I'm sorry to hear that." She laughed, but it quickly turned into a cough. "No, you're not, and you shouldn't be. I wouldn't be in your place." "What do you want, Eleanor?" "To apologize." "I really apologize. Not for my benefit. I know I'm beyond redemption, but for yours. You gave me 3 extra years of life. 3 years I didn't deserve, and I spent them alone, abandoned, facing the consequences of my actions. But still, they were 3 years. Eleanor, I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm just acknowledging what you did. Even knowing who I was, you gave me an organ. That's a kind of good I can't fully understand. Richard and I thought it made you weak, but it didn't, did it? It made you strong enough to survive us." I was quiet for a long moment. "Thank you for saying that." Take care of Ella. She's lucky to have you. Luckier than she'll ever know." The line went dud. 3 days later, so did Eleanor. I stand in the doorway of what used to be my home, but it feels different now, better. The walls are painted in warm colors that Ella and I chose together. The pictures on the walls capture our real family. Jeremy graduating from college, Ella's first day of school, and the 3 of us at the beach last summer. Behind me, a car door slams. Jeremy's home from law school for the weekend, bringing his fiancée Sophie to meet us properly. He'd called earlier, his voice shaking with excitement and nerves. "Mom, I'm going to propose this weekend at the house where we rebuilt everything. Is that okay?" More than okay. Perfect. Ella races past me, now 10 years old, all legs and energy, launching herself at her brother. "Jeremy, Jeremy, I made honor roll." He catches her, spinning her around. "Of course you did, genius. You're my sister." Sophie smiles at me over their heads, and I see why Jeremy loves her. She looks at him the way I once looked at Richard, but there's something more there. Respect, equality, partnership. "Mrs. Winters," she says warmly, "thank you for having me, Julia." "Please, you're always welcome." Richard arrives an hour later for his monthly dinner with Ella. He looks older, grayer, smaller somehow. Prison and disgrace have carved lines into his face that will never fade. He brings Chinese takeout, Ella's favorite, and sits quietly at the table that once hosted his betrayal. "The house looks good," he says carefully. "It looks like home," I correct him. He nods, watching Ella chatter to Sophie about her science project, observing Jeremy as he helps her with her chopsticks. "You did good, Julia, with both of them." "We did what we had to do." "No," he says quietly, "you did more than that. You could have turned Ella away, could have poisoned Jeremy against me completely, could have destroyed me even more thoroughly than you did. But you didn't. I did what was right for the children, both of them." He reaches into his pocket, pulling out an envelope. "I've been saving. It's not much, but I want to contribute to Ella's college fund. And this," he pulls out a second envelope. "This is for Jeremy for law school." "Richard, please let me do this one thing right." I take the envelopes. "Thank you." After dinner, after Richard leaves with promises to take Ella to the Science Museum next month, Sophie and Jeremy disappear for a walk, where I know he'll propose by the garden I planted over Eleanor's ashes. She'd left instructions for me to scatter them, a final irony. Ella and I sit on the porch. "Mama Julia, can I ask you something?" "Always." "My dad did something bad to you, didn't he?" Before I respond, I consider my words carefully. He made some poor choices that hurt our family, but you let me stay anyway. You weren't responsible for his choices. You're your own person, Ella, and you're wonderful. She leans against me, and I feel the familiar ache of my scar. It never fully goes away, the reminder of what I gave and what was taken. But sitting here with Ella beside me and Jeremy's laughter floating in from the garden, I realize something profound. They took my kidney, but I kept my heart. They tried to break me, but I became unbreakable. They thought they were discarding me like trash, but I turned into treasure. Mama Julia. Yes, sweetheart. I love you. I love you too. Just then, Jeremy and Sophie return, her hand adorned with a ring that catches the porch light. Our eyes meet, and I see my son, the man he's become, the lawyer he'll be, the husband and father he'll grow into. Nothing like Richard. Everything I'd hoped. "Mom," he says, pulling Sophie forward, "we have something to tell you." I smile and stand, embracing them both. "Welcome to the family, Sophie." Ella squeals and joins the hug, and we stand there, the 4 of us, a family built not from betrayal, but from its ashes. Stronger for being broken, whole for being scarred. The scar across my abdomen throbs as it always does, but now I understand. It's not pain, it's proof. Proof that I survived.
Proof that sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction, it's resurrection. It's taking what they meant for evil and turning it into something beautiful. It's raising their children to be better than they ever were.
It's discovering happiness amidst the ruins of their cruelty. It's living fully and completely without them. Come on, I say, leading my family inside. Let's celebrate. The door closes behind us, shutting out the past and sealing in our future. The house that once witnessed betrayal now embraces triumph. The table where divorce papers were served now hosts engagement celebrations. I am the woman they thought was nothing, whom they never truly knew. I'm everything they never suspected I could be. I'm unbreakable. I'm victorious. I'm home.